Thank you.
Okay, I too want to start by expressing solidarity and sympathy with the people of Brussels and for the awful stuff that's happened there this morning. Outrageous attack on the people in the airport and the train station. And I think all of our hearts and minds and thoughts go to the people of that city, wherever they came from. It is a very cosmopolitan city, multicultural cosmopolitan city. Wherever those people came from, our thoughts are with them and their families. But I also want to say that our thoughts need to be also with the people of Istanbul, where a bombing earlier this month cost the lives of at least 4 people. There's other very serious injuries. And one that's gone completely unmentioned and unnoticed by most people, I'd say, on the planet, is Baghdad last month, where 70 people lost their lives in a car bomb. And I think it's important to say that because all lives are as valuable, regardless of whether they're in Brussels or Baghdad, and we need to take note of that. And all of these people are victims of terrorism and war. I just want to make a comment on that, because I believe that at the moment in the world we are locked into a cycle of war and terrorism. It's a cycle that there seems to be no break in. In fact, it seems to be escalating all the time. And what should be one of the strongest purposes of any leader in this world at the moment is to look for ways of breaking that cycle. And that has got to be about countries disengaging from occupation, from war and from intervention in parts of the world where they've no business in being. And I think that message should go from a so-called neutral country like Ireland through the European Council and out to the rest of the world. And we would have to start, of course, by leading by example and refusing to allow Shannon or any other utility in this country be used for such intervention and for such imperialist activity in other parts of the world. But on the substantive question of what we're talking about today, I'm going to start by asking the Taoiseach or Deputy Kenny. I don't know whether he's Taoiseach or Deputy Kenny now, but I'm going to start by asking him a question which might seem unremoved, but I think it's connected. And that is, I'd like to know if Deputy Kenny went into the European Council and, just with the same vigour as Cameron did to represent his people, indicated that we have a very serious crisis in this country at the moment, an extraordinary crisis, unprecedented. It's a housing crisis, it's a human rights crisis, it's a crisis of accommodation. You can go into all the details, and I'm sure we will in the afternoon, of the 1,500 children and 700 families sleeping in emergency accommodation last night. Has Deputy Kenny ever gone to that council where, according to himself, he's well respected, and said, look, lads, we've got to deal with this crisis, and that means we've got to build at least 5,000 social housing a year for the next 10 years. That means we're going to have to break your fiscal rules. Whatever it takes, we're going to look after the human rights of our population. Has he ever done that? And if not, why not? And would he not take a leaf out of David Cameron's book and go with the same determination, albeit Cameron's base has been a more racist and selfish one, but go with the same determination to represent the people of this country and deal with the crisis? And I say it's not unconnected, because we have promised to take 4,000 refugees into this country, and so far have taken little more than 300. And what people will knee-jerk reaction think is, we can't look after people in this country, we can't accommodate them, why are we taking them from the outside? And I would argue that we have to look after people in this country and the refugees where this crisis is very, very serious. I have lots of friends in Syria. It's a country I visited regularly. I loved it. And there's many of them I've heard from recently, but there's many more I haven't heard from in the last 4 or 5 years. And there are some of them who are stuck in the Yarmouk Palestinian camp in Damascus and are literally dying of famine. We have no idea how bad the suffering and how bad the treachery, the rape, the pillage, the plunder, the murder, the terrorism that has been launched on those people by proxy armies from Russia, from Saudi, and by the regime itself. And why it is that they, in their droves, daily risk the drowning, the misery, the being encamped on borders for months on end with young children, the risk of losing their families at seas, is because that threat still exists and has not gone away, and they are hopeful for a future for their family. So to say that the deal with Turkey on the crisis of refugees is any more than horse trading is probably a bit kind to that deal. Turkey will get, according to the Financial Times, €6 billion. They will get access to visa-free travel for their citizens, and they'll get accelerated European Union membership. But this doesn't mean that Turkey applies to the Geneva Convention on Refugees. It already has 3 million refugees inside its borders. Most of them are not in organised camps. They're scattered in towns and villages and rural places, living in deep poverty. And why are we then saying that Turkey is capable of taking more and that Europe is overloaded? Quite the contrary. Europe is one of the richest parts of the planet and has done nothing in terms of its fair share. The major issue here is that the people who we're talking about taking one for one out of Greece and back to Turkey will be taken by force. These people will not go gently into the night. They did not cross the seas, risk life and limb, and spend every penny they have to sit on the Macedonian border for months, at least 46,000 of them, and then to go, yes, sir, you can take me back to Turkey.
Thank you, Deputy.
There will be violence. There will be state terrorism. There's already violence and
Deputy,
state terrorism,
take your seat,
and if we stand over that, then shame on Ireland. In the anniversary of the Rising, shame on Ireland for voting for this agreement, and I want to ask the Taoiseach to go back to the European Council and withdraw our support for this outrageous agreement.
Thank you, Deputy.